this next question, we wanted to flip it up a little bit because all of us here in some way or another with our mediums, we are a little bit in the public eye. And I was wondering, for example, of how much, instead of us using our identity to resist, how much actually people or media pushes you to use your identity as resistance, because many times, as we mentioned before, our presence, our solely presence in certain spaces becomes will become the token Latino or the token this or the token that. So with that in mind, given today's political climate, have you been pushed to use your identity as a form of resistance? And if so, how does that influence your art?
Woo! Yeah. No, this is actually like a particularly interesting question for me because when we filmed Drag Race, the political climate was very, very different. And also, I was not really a public figure at the time. I had a small following in Brooklyn, and I focused on my art and my scene. And so going into kind of presenting myself to media with that mindset and that political climate, and now revisiting it all and seeing how it comes across, it's, I become someone separate from my actual self, and I begin to represent certain people and represent the experiences that I've had that other people share. And I realize in this climate what power it has just to exist simply in a visible way, in a way that I could never have predicted. And it does, I think it pushes us as artists who are visible in the media. We want to hold ourselves to a certain standard, to not necessarily speak for people, but to like really truly represent what it is that our community talks about. And I tried to do that on Drag Race, but at the same time, it happens more than, you don't need to necessarily do so much, because just us existing, even literally just all of us being here in this convention center, in this room, in this political climate has an effect, because saying that, so clap for yourselves. Because being unafraid to gather and to celebrate the kind of beauty that I know that we all believe in is a resistance when you live in a political climate that says that you don't have value. And I see that echoed in all kinds of ways. And we really have to uplift the shows like Drag Race that even in lighthearted ways, in entertaining ways, forefront queer experiences, the experiences of queer people of color, especially of trans people, because that does change people's perceptions of what is even out there. And so, like, amazing for all of you for being here and being part of making a really strong, visible statement.
So yeah, I've done 2 seasons of So Many White Guys, and the first one, it was like really fun. I had, people on like Nia Long and Alana Glazer, and it was really just kind of like a celebration of like women, and Jana Mock was on. It was like really cool and fun, and then, Trump got elected, and I was just kind of like, oh, like.
How?
It's like, I can't keep doing this show the same way, but like, I think with everything going on, for me to just only like interview actors and performers, to me it felt kind of like, I don't know if that's the best way to use this show. And so with this season, Alana Glazer is a EP on the show. We were like, okay, we want to have a segment called Across the Aisle, in which we like reach across the aisle to people who don't agree with us to like find like one common ground. So like one of them was like napping. Everyone loves napping. Everyone loves babies, And so we do like funny stuff like that. But then I also I definitely was more political this year. Like I interviewed Melissa Harris Perry, who was fantastic, and she was very, very just practical and like how she was breaking down the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party, talking about how liberals failed in a way too, which I thought was fantastic. And then I also had Bassem Youssef on, who, if you don't know him, he's brilliant. He's basically like the Egyptian Jon Stewart, and he got chased out of Egypt. Like, he was getting like death threats because of his satire. And so he like started over here in LA, and you know, having him giving the perspective like what you guys are going through now is like what so many countries have been going through forever. And he really provided perspective like, you guys can resist, you can fight back, like it's not over, but like maybe this will make us more self-aware and make us more politically active, because I know I kind of was like, oh, Barack's president, I'm just gonna chill for 8 years. Like I did. I would, you know what I mean? I didn't even mean to, but I was like, the Obamas are so great, and like we really did achieve this huge thing with his election. And I wasn't really like paying attention to midterm elections. I wasn't really speaking out. I wasn't really doing like a lot of philanthropic stuff like I am now. And so this was like a wake-up call for the country changing, being like, oh, we kind of like fell asleep a little bit at the wheel, and like we can totally turn this around, and we just have to infuse it more in our comedy and more in our everyday lives with our friends, with like conversations, with social media. I think we're all posting selfies and stuff, which is great, but we can also just like tag like, hey, donate to this thing. Like, so I think there's just this balance where we can just incorporate in our everyday lives, and it just becomes kind of second nature to focus on politics as well as focus on ourselves.
I got it. You got it? Okay. Yeah. I think it is very important now more than ever to be a voice for our communities. I sometimes feel the burden of representing like my community. You know, I'm Mexicano, and I come from East LA, and you know, whether it's playing around with femininity or masculinity, or people saying I'm not Mexicano enough, I'm not macho enough, I'm not Latino enough. There's so many rules, and there's just so many like judgments that just get easily tossed around, right? So I feel that it's very important with everything that I do, whether it's a song, whether it's even posting a selfie, you know, it's like, what am I saying with this? It's like, because there's a lot of people looking at you, and they need to connect with you. They need you to be the voice to represent them. I try to, you know, what is this song saying about me? Does the world need this song, and why is it important? But also, I have to remember that I'm an entertainer, and I'm entertaining, and so what I do is I like to inspire, create the dialogue, upset the trend a little, kind of like throw this in your face, or kind of leave this here and turn this on there, and then have people just kind of talking about it. And some people will be upset, some people will praise it, some people won't understand it, but then we'll come back and revisit it and kind of get it, and then really like fan out over it. But after I put it out into the universe, it's like not for me to discuss anymore. It's like I create the dialogue, I create the commentary, and I think that's what the world needs, you know, this discussion going back and forth, so that people can be a little bit more open-minded.
I really want to echo what Sasha said earlier about how existence is an act of resistance, because I think that we are living in an era where our identities, our bodies, our relationships are being politicized, they're being debated, and there's a lot of dialogue happening about just the fact that we are existing and being who we are, and it's being challenged and confronted in a way that we haven't experienced the past 8 years. And so to be at some place like DragCon, to be expressing yourself as strongly and boldly and powerfully as you can, and then to take that back to your communities all across the country and the world, that has an incredible impact, because you're presenting a different narrative, and you're also empowering and emboldening younger people who might be looking for that one beacon in their community who they can identify with. You know, I'm from a really, really small town in Northwest Ohio, where when I went home last summer, it was all like homemade Trump signs and farm fields. And when I was there, I would have loved to see anyone who's out in this audience right now hanging out in my community, or just being visible in whatever way made sense for them. And so I think that that's so important and that's so powerful, is just the visibility, because that takes courage to walk out the door, to hold hands with your partner, to get in drag, to present however you want to present. And I think that we need to applaud each other for that and support each other through that. I also believe that it seems like people are kind of going into two groups now, because every morning there are so many scary headlines. Whenever I get a news alert, I'm scared to look at it. And it feels like you look at the the news every day, and it's so demoralizing. We need to be taking care of ourselves and practicing self-care and supporting each other. And so there are some folks who want to know everything that's happening and be up to date on every step. And then there are other folks who are kind of stepping back and they feel so overwhelmed by it all that they can't engage and they need to just focus on taking care of themselves. And so I think for each group, for the folks that do really care and want to get even more involved, social media is a great way to learn about how there's a protest happening every day. You could literally be calling your member of Congress every single day about a new bill or a new appointment or something that's been introduced. And so staying connected and informed that way. But then for the folks who might not as proactively be looking at news or social media, I think it is shows like RuPaul's Drag Race that have political discussions integrated within the content. Or like what Phoebe said, integrating a political or activist message inside broader entertainment, pop culture, entertainment, social media posts, so people are getting exposed to the message even if they're not proactively seeking it out. That's really important, especially to reach the folks who might not proactively be looking at how they can support the LGBTQ community. But then when they see Sasha paying homage to Keith Haring and Basquiat and they want to Google and learn more because it's beautiful art, that's incredibly powerful.
The next thing we want to talk about is what influences us. We are sitting on this panel with people that actually influence Latinos Who Lunch, which is pretty amazing. I mean, your activism, Raymond, is amazing. I love your visual work. Sasha Velour, your drag magazine Velour is just incredible. Her t-shirts, I'm buying all of them because they come in big girl sizes too. A.B. Soto, I mean Cha-Cha Bitch. Have you guys heard that song? Also on RuPaul's Drag Race. And Phoebe Robinson. I mean, we're podcasters, two dope queens, so many white guys. One of my favorite podcasts. So it's such an honor to be here with you guys. And your book, Phoebe Robinson's book, Don't Touch My Hair.
No,
and
you can't touch
sorry.
my hair. Yeah.
Sorry. Oh man, I practiced it and I got it wrong.
Yeah, you can't touch my hair. Yeah.
You can't touch my hair and other things I still have to explain. So, so we're gonna talk about what influences. We want to know who and what influences you to continue creating. So we're gonna switch it up and start with Raymond this time.
Well, one of the things that I think is most exciting about social media is that we literally can create queer community globally, and we can connect with folks regardless of where they live and what situations they're going through. And so even if you feel like you are the proverbial only LGBTQ person in the village, you can now connect online, connect with everyone in the room, connect with the queens from Drag Race, find someone who has a story that you can identify with. And I think that that's revolutionary and exciting. And so I really draw inspiration from activists and from free spirits and creative thinkers that I met online. And especially the past couple of months, I have been obsessive about the injustice that's happening in Chechnya right now, because I think it represents the intersection of so many things that are oppressing us right now. The fact that mainstream media is not covering it, because if they were covering it, there would be more pressure on the United Nations and on international diplomats to say something. The fact that Trump and his White House have not made any statements. Nikki Haley, the ambassador to the UN, did condemn, which I appreciate that she did that, and as she should. But there hasn't been near enough of a strong statement from the Republican administration or from Congress. But I've actually been able to connect with people in Chechnya and who are on the ground in Russia and are trying to figure out how they can transform within, and then as well as LGBTQ folks who have sought asylum in the US and are living in New York and LA and other big cities. And just the fact that we're able to have that network and that we're able to support each other, and even I can just send a message to some of the folks I know in Russia and say, we are thinking of you and we love you and we support you, and just stay strong and let us know how we can help you and if there's anything we can do. I think that the fact that we can do that now through technology is really inspiring. And when I hear their stories and think about what they're going through, it makes me want to run around with my rainbow flag, like screaming to CNN to cover this and screaming to Congress to talk about it. And until all of that gets solved, I think I'll keep going.
I'm very inspired by gay history, and it's funny how gay history is kind of repeating itself all over again now. The 70s and Castro and Harvey Milk and everything. I mean, I've always been, even as like a young kid, like I was always really fascinated by everything that had to happen for us to be in this room here today, and what the lives that were sacrificed for us to be living out loud now. So I think it's really important for me to live out loud in every way possible, walking down the street holding hands or writing music. By just being myself, I will inspire my community, my Mexican brothers and sisters, the Latino community, to just live a little bit more out loud. And I think that that's what we're all here doing, you know, living out loud.
The question was
what influences you to continue creating?
Well, I'm a '90s kid. Like I grew up with like
Yes.
Moesha, Living Single, and just a lot of shows that were about. I think like I love reality TV. Like I love Real Housewives, but it also it's low key trash, and it like kind of
Great.
like. Or maybe high key trash. Maybe it's high key trash. Okay. It's a Mariah Carey dog whistle key trash. I don't know. And it's fun and it's entertaining, but I think a lot of reality and also scripted stuff is now presenting this notion that there isn't a sisterhood or that women don't get along together. And, you know, I just remember growing up watching these shows. Even on Martin, like Pam and Gina were like tight as and like they were great. And I think, you know, that's part of the thing that inspired Two Dope Queens is that Jess and I just wanted to be like, we are two black women. We hang out with each other. We're not gunning for each other's spot. Like we support each other. And we have conversations that black women have. We talk about black hair. We talk about racist cab drivers. We talk about like hot dudes. We talk about all those different things. And so I really just was inspired by that. And I really just want to kind of keep presenting that narrative of women do get along and women do collaborate together, because I think so often we're not even given the opportunity to collaborate together. And so, you know, we took it upon ourselves to be like, well, we're going to start a show. And we like ended up being #1 on iTunes for like a long time, which was like fantastic. Because the podcasting world is so overwhelmingly white, and there is that very like Ira Glass like voice, which I can never sound like. I just cannot sound like that. And I remember when Jess and I first started, we would get comments mostly from straight white dudes who would be like, you guys should change the way you talk, you know, or you guys, your voices are too high. And it's just stuff like that where it's like, you just don't like women. That's what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't like women. And so, or you say like too much. And it's like, everyone says like a lot. That's just a word that's in everyone's vocabulary. But we really just wanted to put content out there that lets other people know that you can really actually be your most self, and that is what's going to make you the most fulfilled and also the most successful and also the most happy. And so I think I constantly, like, you know, look to other people that I see ahead of me, like Issa Rae or Ava DuVernay, and see like what they're doing and the empires that they're creating, and being like, oh, this is a great time to be a person of color right now. You really do. With technology, with social media, with podcasting, with you really can be in charge of your own career in a way. Whereas like 20 years ago, you really just had to hope some like white dude in his 50s got you. And it's like, he's not going to get this. He's going to be like, can you straighten your hair? And I'm like, go kill yourself. So, you know what I mean? But now I can do my hair like this, and it's totally fine, because it's like I'm in control of my career. So I think like seeing other women and seeing like even like RuPaul's, I love Drag Race so much. I talk about it. I talk about it all the time. It's like my #1 self-help thing. I read a lot of self-help books, but this is like the best self-help thing, and it's all about loving yourself, living out loud, and really being who you are. And that's what the world needs. Like, they don't need more carbon copies. They need each of us to be ourselves to help make things better. So that's like what I try to do.
I feel like I can echo something that each of you said a little bit, because there's the sources of inspiration are like so plentiful when it comes to this community. I actually was, right before I started doing drag, I was living in Russia for a year in 2010. Things were definitely getting very, very bad, and I had gone to Russia to study art ostensibly, but what I was really interested in was looking at gay activist strategies in Russia. And so I was able to do like some kind of secret interviews with people. And it was interesting because the gay community there is very, very divided. In many ways, like we are, especially at the time when the focus on gay marriage was really, really dividing, I feel like, the queer activist community in some really important ways. And it was really interesting paying attention to lots of different kinds of activist strategies and looking for the ways, I was looking for the ways that they used art. But a lot of when your life is at risk, art means something different, I think. And so art for them, activist art in gay Russia was like sitting down for a cup of coffee with someone and knowing that each other are both queer and seeing that and being safe with that being open. And seeing the ways that that art has had to shift in so many ways and become personal and then become grand and become abstract based on the needs of the society was really, really interesting to me. And when I came back, I started looking into the history of queer activism in America. And I am a huge fan of, I don't know if fan is the right word, but I'm a minor history buff about the Stonewall riots because I had always heard about them, but my understanding of what actually happened and who was actually involved was very, very skewed, I discovered when I started doing the research, and learning how important non-binary, trans, drag queens, drag kings were at the riots was very, very important, and inspired, that truly is what inspired me to take up drag as a way of helping the community face activism in a way that is so uniquely queer because it's with beauty, which we understand to be political and to be something that we can politicize. It's with sort of like extravagant drama and like fits of madness when it's needed, which like we know that can be like a really useful political strategy too. That like tears and pathos and crying together, that can be activist art too. And so that all really inspired me, and I think that is the history of queer activism. It's the history of queer art. It's the history of drag, and that's what continues to inspire me. And then the other thing I would say is that the people around me, like I think a lot of people watching me on the show have observed that I love queer theory, and I'm like, but the truth is, I am too old to have studied queer theory in college. Like, it was not offered when I was in college. Like, it was not cool back then. I learned about queer philosophy of philosophers like Munoz and Judith Butler. I learned about these thinkers through my direct community, to people who, not necessarily people who were very educated, but people who take up these texts and these thinkers as a means of survival. And like use these ideas and these histories to inform their everyday lives. So it's really like I continue to be shaped as the thinker by the people around me who are working harder than me, it seems, at all times, and especially in places, in cities, which and then the sort of like metaphorical city of the internet too, where you are able to connect with people in the same way, sometimes even in better ways, because you can easily send each other texts and links and images. So I think that's all really, really powerful, and I'm really curious to see the ways that in this difficult political climate we can use the kind of urban magic of the internet to connect with people who live in places where it's not safe to just exist. And it's amazing the way that like I can see that Drag Race reaches those people, and then that social media is able to like really begin an intimate conversation with those. And so I think like each and every one of us in this room is capable of connecting with people throughout the world and inspiring them to be open and forward-thinking.
Can I say something really quickly too? For the record, I loved Sasha's Judith Butler last night. I appreciate that you referenced her and that hopefully a lot of people were Googling and learning about Judith Butler.
Right.
So thank you for doing that.
Just having her name appear was a success enough, because the impression, I don't know if that was that successful.